were essentially upgraded versions of racing drones and commercial quadcopters, fitted with first-person view cameras, enhanced batteries, and improvised explosive payloads. The unit had successfully struck targets at ranges exceeding 100 kilometers by using a relay system where operators would hand off control of the drone to another operator positioned closer to the target. Lieutenant Andriy Bondarenko, the drone unit commander, proposed an audacious plan. His team had been tracking Russian electronic warfare patterns and had noticed something crucial. The jamming systems protecting the rail route were powerful, but not continuous. They operated in zones, creating a patchwork of protected and vulnerable areas. More importantly, the jamming was primarily designed to disrupt standard military drone frequencies and global positioning system signals. The commercial drones his unit used operated on different frequencies and could navigate using visual recognition and inertial guidance when global positioning system was unavailable. The plan required three things: precise intelligence on when the next ammunition train would make its run, real-time spotting to track the train's position, and a drone operator willing to fly a long-duration mission deep into enemy territory with significant risk of losing the aircraft and failing the mission. Kovalenko's intelligence network could provide the first requirement: Ukrainian reconnaissance drones operating at high altitude could provide spotting data, and Bondarenko had a pilot willing to take the risk. Senior Sergeant Oleksandr Sidorenko, a former commercial drone racing champion who had been flying combat missions for 18 months. On November 11th, Kovalenko's network sent an alert. Signals intelligence had intercepted Russian railway communications, indicating a major ammunition movement scheduled for the following night. Satellite imagery confirmed unusual activity at the Rostov-on-Don depot. The train, approximately 9 in the evening, Kovalenko's spotters confirmed the train had departed Mariupol, heading north. It consisted of 47 cargo cars loaded with artillery ammunition, rockets, and mortar shells. Russian doctrine suggested this train carried between 450 and 550 tons of ordnance, representing several days of sustained artillery operations. The train was traveling at approximately 75 kilometers per hour. Sidorenko launched the drone at 21:30 hours. The octocopter climbed to 800 meters and began its journey east. The first 40 kilometers were relatively uneventful, but as the drone crossed deeper into occupied Donetsk, conditions became more dangerous. At the 60-kilometer mark, the drone entered a known electronic warfare zone. Sidorenko's screen flickered as jamming systems attempted to disrupt his control signal. The relay system kicked in, and a second operator, 30 kilometers ahead, picked up control. The drone continued forward using waypoint navigation and visual landmark recognition. High-altitude reconnaissance drones were feeding real-time updates on the train's position. It had just passed through Yasinuvata and was approaching a vulnerable section of track through an open valley. This was the strike window. Sidorenko calculated he had approximately 15 minutes before the train would reach a more heavily defended area. The drone was now 115 kilometers from launch, operating at extreme communication range. Battery levels were at 38%. Sidorenko pushed maximum speed, racing to reach the interception point. A Pantsir S1 system 20 kilometers south activated its tracking radar. But the drone was small and flying low enough to present a difficult target. At 23:45 hours, the drone reached a position 8 kilometers from the train. Sidorenko switched to manual control and descended to 200 meters altitude. Through the camera, he could see the railway line cutting through the valley. Then there it was, the train, a long string of cargo cars snaking through darkness, its locomotive headlight cutting through the night. The targeting solution was complex. The train was moving at 70 kilometers per hour. The drone was approaching from the south at 60 kilometers per hour. Sidorenko needed to account for wind drift, the train's movement, and the explosive's delay fuse. He had trained for this scenario dozens of times in simulation, but this was real. A single mistake would mean the drone would miss. The explosive would detonate harmlessly beside the tracks, and Russia would immediately increase security on all future ammunition trains. He aimed for the middle section of the train, specifically targeting cars that intelligence suggested were carrying artillery shells rather than rockets. Artillery shells were more stable and less likely to detonate from nearby explosions. But if he could breach the cargo car and get the explosive inside, the overpressure could trigger a sympathetic detonation of the shells inside. At 23:47 hours, Sidorenko committed to the attack run. The drone dove toward the train at a steep angle, accelerating to maximum speed. Russian troops on the train's security escort saw something streaking out of the darkness and opened fire with small arms, but it was too late. The drone impacted the 16th cargo car from the front at approximately 100 kilometers per hour. The initial explosion was relatively small, just 6 kilograms of high explosive detonating against the steel side of a cargo car. For a moment, Sidorenko thought the mission had failed. But then, 3 seconds later, the artillery shells inside began to cook off. The explosion started small, but rapidly cascaded. Within 10 seconds, 3 adjacent cargo cars were detonating. Within 30 seconds, the entire middle section of the train had become a rolling inferno. The locomotive engineer attempted to accelerate, trying to separate the front section from the conflagration, but the force of the explosions had damaged the track. At 23:48 hours, the train derailed. 23 cargo cars piled up in a catastrophic wreck, and the ammunition inside continued to explode for 45 minutes. The explosion was so intense that seismic stations in Ukraine, over 80 kilometers away, registered the detonations. Satellite imagery taken 6 hours later showed a debris field stretching over 800 meters. The track was destroyed for nearly 2 kilometers, with rails twisted into unrecognizable shapes. Russian recovery crews would need weeks to repair the damage. But the real impact was not the destroyed train or the damaged railway. It was what happened in the following days across the Zaporizhzhia front. Russian artillery units that had been firing 40,000 shells per day suddenly found themselves rationed to fewer than 15,000. Battery commanders who had grown accustomed to unlimited fire support were now being told to conserve ammunition and prioritize only the most critical targets. Offensive operations that had been planned for mid-November were postponed indefinitely. Ukrainian intelligence analysts monitoring Russian military communications reported a dramatic increase in encrypted traffic related to logistics and supply chain management. Russian commanders were scrambling to find alternative supply routes and expedite ammunition deliveries from depots further east. But the Russian logistics system was not designed for this kind of rapid adaptation. It took time to reroute trains, time to coordinate new security measures, time to rebuild confidence that the supply lines were secure. By November 19th, 1 week after the strike, Ukrainian forces reported a 67% reduction in Russian artillery fire rates across the southern Zaporizhzhia axis. Russian infantry units that had been supported by overwhelming artillery cover were now advancing with minimal fire support, making them vulnerable to Ukrainian drones and anti-tank weapons. Several planned Russian assaults were either canceled or resulted in significantly higher casualties than expected, because the artillery support was simply not available. The strategic calculus had fundamentally changed. Russia had spent billions of dollars building a logistics network designed to sustain high-intensity artillery warfare. That network was supposed to be resilient, distributed, and protected by multiple layers of security. And yet, a $30,000 drone, operated by a single Ukrainian sergeant, had disrupted the entire system. The message was clear. In modern warfare, it does not matter how much money you spend on infrastructure if your enemy can identify and exploit the critical nodes that keep that infrastructure functioning. Russian military leadership responded by further dispersing their logistics network and increasing security on all rail movements. But this came with its own costs. More security meant more troops tied down in rear area protection duties. More dispersed logistics meant longer delivery times and reduced efficiency. The Russian military was learning the same lesson that militaries throughout history had learned. The side that can sustain its logistics wins the war, and the side that cannot loses, regardless of how many troops or weapons it has in the field. For Sidorenko, the mission ended anticlimactically. His drone crashed in a field approximately 20 kilometers from the strike site, its batteries finally exhausted. He would never recover it, and Russian forces, who eventually found the wreckage, would discover nothing but commercial components and improvised modifications. There was no advanced technology to reverse engineer, no secret weapons to study, just a simple drone, built from parts anyone could order online, operated by a skilled pilot who understood his equipment and his mission. 3 weeks after the strike, Ukrainian intelligence reported that Russia had moved to a new logistics model for the southern front. Instead of running large ammunition trains every 72 hours, they were now running smaller trains more frequently, using routes that varied randomly. It was a more secure system, but also a less efficient one. The total amount of ammunition reaching the front had not returned to pre-strike levels, and Russian artillery fire rates remained suppressed through the end of November. The railway strike became a case study in asymmetric warfare for military planners around the world. It demonstrated that in the age of drones and precision weapons, there was no such thing as a truly secure rear area. Every logistics node, every supply route, every concentration of valuable materiel was potentially vulnerable to attack by weapons that cost a fraction of what they were defending against. The operation demonstrated something that military theorists had been discussing for years, but few had seen implemented so effectively: the concept of strategic disruption through tactical strikes. By identifying and attacking a critical node in the enemy's logistics network, Ukraine had achieved effects far beyond the physical destruction of the target. They had created uncertainty, forced resource reallocation, and degraded enemy capabilities across a vast area of operations. And they had done it without deploying expensive, long-range missiles or risking valuable aircraft and pilots. What made this operation particularly significant was not just its immediate success, but the implications for future warfare. Military academies would study this strike as an example of how information superiority and operational creativity could overcome material disadvantages. Ukraine did not have the industrial capacity to match Russia's ammunition production, but they could identify and exploit vulnerabilities with precision. The intelligence preparation had taken months. Kovalenko's team analyzed thousands of satellite images, correlated them with signals intelligence, and built mathematical models to predict train movements based on artillery fire patterns. They had reverse-engineered the Russian logistics system by observing its outputs. The drone technology represented years of field testing. Ukrainian drone units had lost hundreds of aircraft, to enemy fire and jamming. But each loss taught valuable lessons about frequencies, altitudes, and payloads. Sidorenko was a former competitive drone racer whose split-second timing skills proved invaluable in combat. The psychological impact was equally important. Russian logistics personnel who felt safe 120 kilometers behind the front line now knew they were vulnerable. This created stress and forced commanders to dedicate more resources to rear area security. Ukrainian leadership recognized this strike was not a permanent solution. Russia would adapt, but adaptation takes time, and every week of suppressed artillery fire rates allowed Ukrainian forces to consolidate positions. The economic calculations were equally important. Russia had invested enormous sums in building and defending its logistics infrastructure. The destroyed train alone represented $80 million in lost materiel. The damaged railway would cost tens of millions more to repair. The additional security measures implemented after the strike would require thousands of additional troops and hundreds of millions in new equipment. All of this to defend against attacks that cost Ukraine essentially nothing in comparison. This asymmetry was the key to understanding modern warfare. Traditional military thinking assumed that defensive measures would always be more cost-effective than offensive weapons. But drones and precision weapons had inverted that equation. Now the attacker could choose when and where to strike, forcing the defender to protect everything all the time. The cost of comprehensive defense was becoming prohibitively expensive. Intelligence analysts from Western countries noted several factors that made it possible. Ukraine had access to real-time satellite imagery from American and European assets. They had developed sophisticated signals intelligence networks. Ukrainian operators had training and skill to execute complex missions with minimal equipment, and their command structure allowed rapid decision-making. The railway strike highlighted the importance of electromagnetic spectrum management in modern warfare. Russian jamming systems were powerful, but could not jam all frequencies without disrupting their own communications. Ukrainian forces learned to operate in the gaps of Russian electronic warfare coverage. The aftermath revealed interesting details about Russian military culture. Rather than redesigning their logistics system, Russian commanders added more security layers to the existing system. This was driven by institutional inertia and difficulty admitting fundamental flaws. Ukrainian forces were already planning follow-up operations. They had proven the concept worked and collected valuable data on Russian responses. The adaptation between Ukrainian strike capabilities and Russian defensive measures would continue. This $30,000 drone strike did not just destroy a train. It demonstrated a fundamental shift in how wars are fought. When a commercial quadcopter assembled from off-the-shelf parts can neutralize $80 million worth of military assets from 120 kilometers away, the entire calculus of warfare changes. Ukraine proved that in modern conflict, intelligence and precision matter more than raw firepower. The Russian military adapted by dispersing their logistics and adding more security, but that adaptation came at tremendous cost in efficiency and resources. This operation will be studied in military academies for decades as the moment when asymmetric warfare doctrine was validated on the battlefield in the most dramatic way possible. If this tactical breakdown opened your eyes to how modern warfare actually works, hit that like button and subscribe to Combat Decoded. We analyze the operations that mainstream media misses, decoding the strategies and technologies reshaping conflict in the 21st century. From drone swarms, overwhelming billion-dollar defense systems, to electronic warfare operations that turn enemy weapons into liabilities, we bring you verified analysis backed by operational data. No propaganda, no speculation, just decoded combat reality. New breakdowns drop every week. Subscribe now and join thousands of viewers decoding modern warfare with us.